Greetings, everybody. Welcome. It's right at 7 o'clock, and I see we got a bunch of people joining already. So thank you for the people who are early and on time. Wonderful trait. But I'm going to give you maybe about 60 seconds or so here for people to log on. We have a lot of people who registered for, to see this. So just shut that off. So we're going to just give them an opportunity here to log on. And then we'll start the program. So thank you for being here. I expect us to have a really meaningful conversation tonight. As a matter of fact, I've got a surprise for you. I'll let you in on in a minute when we get started. That is going to take the conversation to a whole new place, a new level that I wasn't expecting. So I'm really excited about that. There's an old adage that God works in mysterious ways, and this is one of them. So I'll tease you with that and let you know what I'm talking about in just a few moments. But thank you, everybody, for being here. And just stand by for a short few seconds here while we let people continue to join. Wonderful to be here. Excited for the conversation we're going to have. And as always, the aim here is to share with you something that is meaningful and that you can take away from this call and that will have an impact on your life. That's why we're all here doing what we're doing tonight. So thank you again for being here. Again, I see people still joining, so I'll give it about another 30 seconds or so, and we'll go ahead and get started. Again, if you're just joining us, stand by. We're going to be getting this whole thing going in just a minute while people are joining. So just stand by, and we will give it about 30 more seconds, and then we're going to start. Again, thank you for joining us. A few more seconds here. We'll go ahead and get into the heart of the program. We have a surprise and a very special treat for you, as I'll be explaining in just a moment. So just stand by and we'll jump in. Do know also, if you're looking at the viewing page right now, let me look at it with you, that if you have questions that you want to ask, you can go to support@mywisdomnutrition.com. If you want to email your question there, our customer support team is there. They're going to receive that email, and they're going to populate a sheet for me to look at. And at the end, or maybe even episodally throughout the experience tonight, we might pop in with a few questions. So if you have any questions or comments, please drop them there. Send that email, and we'll pick it up, and we'll include it in the live webcast. So we are coming to you live right now. This is not pre-recorded. You're watching the real thing, so anything can happen. So stand by. We'll be getting started right now. Let me just go back to this page, and beautiful. All right, so thank you all for being here and taking a few moments to wait while we get everybody logged on. This invitation went out to a lot of people. We just love to bring to the Gentempo.com community content that we feel like is responsive to something that you really care about, something that is meaningful and that can have a positive impact on your life. So, we do various things along the way. Sometimes it's just maybe an article, sometimes it's a masterclass that we'll do. Sometimes it's something like this, which is a webcast. And originally, so here's the big surprise. I was going to have with me tonight Dr. Ed Group. Dr. Group was the founder of Global Healing and is also the formulator and the person that is really gets the exacting standards and manufacturing done behind our wisdom formula. And Ed is, a very brilliant individual that has a lot of insights that I find to be unique. But unfortunately, literally just less than an hour ago, he got a hold of me and said that he was having a pretty significant personal challenge that might preempt him from being able to get to the call, and he actually couldn't get here. At that very moment when I was getting that news, a really dear friend, brother, who is an epic person in the supplement space, who I've interviewed multiple times for Revealed Films, happened to send me a message on a different topic, and that is Shawn Wells. And I said to Shawn, basically kind of begging, and pleading. I didn't need to do that because Shawn always just steps up. But I basically just said, hey, I just had this thing come up, And and I'm having a webinar happening that we promoted to probably about 1 million people, and we had this mishap. Can you step in and actually do this program with me? And he said, absolutely. He's traveling. He was at a conference in San Diego, and he said he can cancel what his plans were for the next hour and come and do this. So I can't tell you how grateful I am. I think God works in mysterious ways, which is this is exactly perfect and how it's supposed to be. And Shawn, so we've been meaning to connect for some time now, and here we are connecting under these circumstances. So, so
Let's
thanks so
go.
much.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. I'm always here for you.
Thank you, and that's a true statement. You always have been. So thank you for that. I'll also, just to give a bit of your background. I mean, literally, you have pages of a CV and in a bio. But you are somebody who's been at this game, especially in the formulation aspect, understanding ingredients, formulations, the most recent science of what's going on. You have like dozens of patents, like 40 or more patents, don't you, on supplement formulations?
Actually, more like on 40 plus ingredients, but more patents, than that because there's multiple patents on each ingredient. So yes,
Wow.
a lot.
Yeah, and that's not an easy thing to do because some people would say, well, everything's been done, and you're constantly innovating and you're finding new things, and so you have this really great research background, but also the practical application background for supplements, and that's why we went to you in Supplements Revealed, for example, to really give us kind of the updates and the insights on what's going on in the industry and try to separate fact from fiction and understand this whole thing because supplements can be an extraordinary blessing for people in their life. At the same time, if you kind of don't know what you're doing, you might be wasting a lot of money and maybe even hurting yourself.
100%. I mean, I can come right off the bat with you think you are buying quality supplements, but I would dare say 90% of the supplements you're buying are not the real deal. Number one, proprietary blends. This is like done throughout the industry. Number two, you look at like on Amazon, for example, a number of the big brands are actually counterfeited. They find the bottle that looks like it, they get the label that looks like it, and they sell it, and it's not the actual product. You need to make sure if you're wanting to buy now or life extension or whoever it is, that you make sure that like they're the first party seller
Mhm.
or there's a quality third party seller like I don't know, GNC, Vitamin Shop, or some trusted name that's selling it on Amazon. Well, but last thing, when Now Foods tested all of these products, they took about 13 different ingredients that were single ingredient products from tons of brands on Amazon. About 80% of them did not test out for the listed active, and
Wow.
about 20 to 30% of them had no active at all.
Wow. None. Just literally,
Right.
what's on the label and what's in the bottle are two different things. I mean, just doesn't
Yes.
even
Yeah.
exist.
And the first scenario can happen just because you didn't do stability work, you didn't have overages, the ingredient decreases over time. Maybe it's a nutrient interaction or something, which is just a quality control issue.
Mhm.
But the other scenario that these companies are doing is just criminal, just flat out criminal. And
And
so,
and
yeah.
so what you're saying is that now some of these that you're talking about are literally counterfeits, right? And we know there's a lot of that going on. And it's amazing to me because we just recently got, for example, Wisdom Formula on the Amazon store. And the hoops you have to jump through to get validated and to get on the store is not easy. Yet I
Right.
guess like some of these like maybe from foreign countries, I won't mention which countries, but that they probably have figured out how to hack the system, get something up, and sell it as if it's the real product. But it's they fake the label, fake the thing, fake the ingredients, and wow,
Fake the
it's
testing, like all of that. Yep.
Wow. Wow. I mean, it's
So
like,
some of this has gotten better on Amazon since like this was mostly 2023 and going into 2024
mm,
that now released a lot of this information and it did shake up Amazon. And so things have gotten better,
mm.
but it's not to say that, it's perfect. And you do have to be aware of what's going on. That's why, I want to buy only from trusted companies and the trusted seller on Amazon. I want full disclosure. I want a company that is doing the testing, all of those steps, like to make sure it's a legitimate product.
Yeah, what's interesting too, what I have found with, and I'll just share my experience with wisdom because it's most recent. But the source materials that come in when you're buying them from the supplier, there's representations made, there's lab tests, that come along with it that guarantee, certain things in there as far as purity, potency, et cetera. But we still test them to verify. And I can't tell you how often, it's not like all the time, but often our tests are showing that they're misrepresenting it.
Yep.
So you have to triple test. You have to keep testing.
So this is called doing third-party testing, right? That's where you send it out to your own lab.
Mhm.
You test your own raw materials, you test your own finished product to make sure that what's being sent is the real deal.
Mm,
And there is a practice in the industry known as dry labbing.
mm.
And what this means is literally just someone typing up the results and not actually testing it out. And this happens a
Wow.
lot with ingredients, especially raw materials, especially the ones that are cheaper.
Mm,
I can remember trying to source ginkgo biloba when I was at another company in the past, and we went through 40 different sources, and the prices were anywhere from $40 a kilo all the way up to about $450 a kilo. So a
wow.
more than 10x difference. Okay. And all of them met the criteria, but when we actually tested them out for DNA and identity, and when we tested them out for strength and potency, only one out of the 40 that we got like actually tested out.
1 out of 40?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was like maybe 10 years back, and basically spiking and selling inappropriate material for ginkgo is very common. It was actually very difficult to find that raw material and extract it properly. So there's certain ingredients that are just rampantly fake on out on the market. Um,
It's so disturbing. That it's that. How can I put it? There's that many bad actors in the marketplace. And some people would say, Sean, though, that well, the problem with supplements is that it's unregulated. It's not unregulated. There's a lot of regulation around supplementation, and you don't even need regulation. I mean, common law says fraud is illegal.
yeah.
It doesn't have to be a supplement rule. It's the criminal code. If you're defrauding by selling something and representing it as something other than what it is, that in and of itself is illegal. It's not peculiar to supplements. It just seems to be a lot of it there.
Yeah, absolutely, Patrick. This is something that is continuing to get better as we're seeing I mean, multi-billion dollar companies come into this industry. We're seeing big pharma come into the industry. We're seeing, even companies that are fairly low cost,
Mm.
but high quality control, like a Swanson, like a Now Foods. These are companies that have extensive quality control and testing, maybe not the most advanced formulations, but they have products that have the quality, and what you're buying is what you're getting. Here's another issue that you might not think of is that, okay, the first issue that we're talking about is, are you getting what you're paying for?
Mhm.
How about when you're getting what you're not paying for? And that would be heavy metals, bacteria, adulterated compounds. Literally, some of these products might run at a contract manufacturer that's running pharmaceuticals, running
Wow.
banned substances. I mean, maybe they're running SARMs and peptides and prohormones and things that an athlete could actually test positive for if there's even they test like with IOC and WADA with athletes, they test down to parts per billion.
Wow.
If there's even like a little bit left over, like on the, in the blender, you can pop positive. So, this is a concern too, that, there might be, like I said, heavy metals in there. There might be a lot of things that could be a concern that you don't want to get. And that's why quality control is extremely important. And that's why, like, I will pay every time for the more expensive version of something that I know is a trusted brand. Like some of the top names like Thorn, Pure Encapsulations, Designs for Health. Some of these brands are like really Zymogen. Like these are really like premium kind of, they're almost on the level of like being pharmaceuticals as supplements where practitioners trust them.
Yep.
And, if a practitioner, you're a practitioner yourself, like, that, it's something that you would literally write a prescription for sometimes. So, these are brands where that they're going to test out and you're going to get what's listed and you're not going to get what's not listed.
Yeah, I mean, this is where it's frustrating, I think, for consumers, right? It's hard enough for them to finally figure out what might be right or good for them, because there's so many options, so many things, and it's sort of this ongoing, joke, almost like a comedy sketch. It's like, every time you hear a pitch on a new supplement, oh, I got to add that, I got to, everything's got its benefits. They're really good at promulgating them and communicating them. Next thing people are taking bags of pills every single day. So, but once you finally say, okay, here's the scope of what I want to have as a part of my wellness routine, or maybe I'm even challenged with some kind of chronic problem, and I'm looking at supplements as being a part of the solution to solving my problem. You finally conclude on what to take, and then it's like, well, now I got to find out, am I getting it from the right person, and how do I trust that? And and I think if I remember when we did Supplements Revealed, you had some advice on that I thought was pretty good, which I think was looking, most of the reputable companies, are going to have their lab testing, it's going to be available at least for a potential customer to be able to look at and review, et cetera. Is that a part of what you recommend?
100%. So it is by law, like supposed to be available if you reach out and ask any supplement company and say, hey, can I see your testing? If they A lot of companies, I've had people call and they say like, we don't have anything like that. Like, that would be a big concern if they're not even, to your point, a lot of supplement companies don't even know that they need a third party test.
Wow.
And so they're just taking it on the word of their contract manufacturer and the raw material suppliers, both of which are incentivized to buy ingredients as cheaply as possible and not do much due diligence.
Yeah.
Not saying that again, now it matters like where you're contract manufacturing and all these things too, but this happens. So you have to have that third party testing set up. You have to have the quality control set up, and there's cost to that. There's cost to having the people to manage that, to send that out, to reject things and buy new material, and all of the pieces that go with that. It's costly to have good quality control.
Yeah, and that's why premium supplements, come at a higher price.
Yeah.
In part, it just, the source materials, if they're doing, if they're getting really good source materials, which is really critical, they're going to cost more. I know the frankincense that we put into Wisdom, for example, you can get organic frankincense at, a given price, but literally the one we use, because we know, where it is, how it's farmed, how it's harvested, how, the whole process it's 4 times the cost of other ones that are still labeled organic, but nonetheless, its potency, its effectiveness, its frequency basically is just better. So, good manufacturers are going to spend more money on their source elements. They come from all over the world, and I know that there's a lot of source elements that come from, or source ingredients that come from places like China that people are wary of. Uh, what are the concerns there as far as how a supplement company can source?
Here's the thing, like if you were to ask me 20 years ago, I would say there was like rampant issues in China, but I would say now that one, about 90+% of raw materials are coming from China.
Mm,
Like even on these branded ingredients that you buy in the US, ultimately they were created in China.
mm,
But two, like I work with a number of partners in China that have GMP, pharma level labs and facilities for manufacturing, and they're literally working like partners I work with Nestle and big companies like Glaxo
mm.
and helping them with their raw materials. So I would say that, and I will tell you that I go to China probably 3 to 4 times a year.
Well,
And this idea that China is like this third world country or something like that, when I go to these cities like Shanghai or Nanjing, which is where I go quite a bit, there is more wealth there than I see in our cities. They have like more expensive cars. There's nicer restaurants. Like it's just not the case.
right.
I will say that they have these bullet trains that are absolutely amazing in China. And so what's cool is you can go, and China's obviously a massive country with a diverse kind of ecosystem. You can go out to these factory towns on these bullet trains. It might take, when I go with my business partner out in China, like it'll take us an hour and a half to get out to something that, driving would have been 10 hours,
Hmm.
and we're out there in an hour and a half, and we're out in these factory towns, and you can come back to the cities. So they've got that figured out in a way, like we're just dependent on planes and cars, and they have their bullet trains that are absolutely amazing there. Um, but I think things have evolved pretty dramatically in China. Are there still plenty of bad players there? Yes, but there's also some of the best in the world there too.
Yeah, it's yeah. You describe it correctly. I've toured mainland China and kind of seen what's going on there. So zero doubt that yeah, there's a lot of sophistication there, no doubt.
Mhm.
But there, yeah. So and it's sophistication on when they're doing good things, and sophistication when they're doing bad things.
Yeah.
So, um, what do you think is some of the current things going on in supplementation that you find most exciting right now?
I mean, for me, there's several things. One, branded ingredients is a trend, and I'm a big part of that trend.
Mm,
I want to take an ingredient. I want to get the intellectual property around it. I want to get the trademarks, the patents, the testing protocols and standards around it, and have just the whole ingredient wrapped up in a brand that's very clear and has clear claims and clear data and clear quality control.
mm,
And now when you buy that branded ingredient, like it's so clear on what it is. Like
right.
a classic one is like maybe HMB, which is like a anti-catabolic leucine metabolite that protects muscle. It was used in sports nutrition, still is, but also is used on the pharma side with sarcopenia, cachexia, and some of these kinds of things. So I've been a driving force on a number of branded ingredients. Some other things that I would say are really trending, anti-aging is big. When I first started out, 20, 25 years ago, I was super interested in anti-aging, but I thought, maybe it was because I was working in hospitals and nursing homes at the time as a dietitian, chief clinical dietitian, and maybe like that was part of it. But most people my age at the time, I was like 30, we're not looking at these ingredients. But I will tell you, like, we heard about lifespan, how long you live. Then it was health span, how long you live healthy, like free from disease, which no one wants to live the last 30 years of their life in a nursing home, right? So
Right.
health span has become a bigger discussion. I've coined this idea of youth span, how long you can live young,
Mm.
how long you can outpace your peers. We're all like kind of in this pecking order of like we think about other friends we have and they're our same age, whether you're 25, 35, 45, 55, whatever it is, you want to say, well, I'm healthier than, so and so, I have better labs than him. Like I'm, I have whatever it is, you want to outpace them. And so we're seeing people in their 20s starting to do a lot of these anti-aging processes, whether it's supplements, medications, peptides, all of these various things. And that's become a big trend
Mm.
is staying young as long as possible.
I love the concept of youth span, and I think I totally resonate with that insofar as it's not just say, "Hey, I lived or I'm alive." There's a lot of very miserable people who are alive who
Yeah.
are a burden on the people they love. It's a matter of how to be vibrant, and that's where I want to take this conversation in a few moments to start talking about kind of the spiritual aspects of health and well-being. Um, but just staying on the theme that you're on right now, um, what are the things right now that you feel like can contribute to that youth span as far as lifestyle in general and probably supplementation, specifically?
So one of my number one things is this idea of we used to like live at the edges.
Mm.
Everything was about the extremes.
Yeah.
And so you would do a lot of caffeine or, in different periods, it was ephedrine and DMAA and these other stimulants. And then in the evening, it is alcohol and Xanax and Ambien and Lunesta and, whatever it is to like, take you up, take you down, take you up, take you down, take you up, take. And so we were exhausted and we were often having sleep apnea and these kinds of things because we're just adrenal fatigued and wiped out.
Mm.
I think now, like, we're really starting to understand this idea of yin and yang,
Mm.
of flow state, of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, of the autonomic nervous system, which is parasympathetic is rest and digest. Put simply, sympathetic is fight, flight, or freeze. And we need to be in these energies sometimes. Some people call like sympathetic more masculine energy, and parasympathetic, which is kind of like healing and nurturing, is kind of more feminine energy.
Mm.
And so there's times to be in both. In Central and South America, they talk about masculine being like the puma energy and going and getting it, and there is the condor energy, where it's like that's the feminine. It's kind of being up above it all and just kind of
Right.
gliding. And so we're seeing now people talk about adaptogens and getting away from caffeine and alcohol. Adaptogens are bimodal, which means you can get both sides of the benefits. It's not come at a cost. So when you're using adaptogens, you can have more energy and sleep better.
Mm.
Why? Because there's something called our stress bucket, allostatic capacity, and how much we can take, which is allostatic load. And that is, and the size of the stress bucket varies from person to person,
Mm.
right? And adaptogens are going to help us grow that stress bucket so we can deal with more stress. And then when we can deal with more stress, we can have more energy and sleep better. And we're more in that center. We're more centered. We're more in flow. And this is an idea that I think has been lost on us during this period of productivity, capitalism, drive, drive, drive. And now we're getting it. We're clicking on this idea of resiliency and being more centered. And so you're seeing ashwagandha, rhodiola, lion's mane, all of these things being more popular. And when you look at the most legendary herbs across all of these cultures, that's what they are. And it's no surprise. In India, it's ashwagandha. In Russia, it's rhodiola. In Asia, it's ginseng. And, it's maca in South America. Why? Because they're so good at improving your resiliency and therefore helps you with everything. And so that is, something that I'm definitely seeing. Like people are getting off coffee, people are getting away from being heavily caffeinated, and alcohol just isn't as trendy as it used to be. People are getting away from alcohol.
Yep.
It's really an interesting time.
Yeah, I think things are changing, and there's sort of this new, new, I don't know if I call it paradigm, but this new way of the culture and what it's moving toward, based on what you're saying. The adaptogenic orientation is something that I've always embraced. On here is probably a bunch of the people who have or take our wisdom formula, but that's the primary thing, in our like thinking about this and in our contemplation of what wisdom is. The whole point was to be adaptogenic. The whole point is to say, hey, it needs to meet you where you are and take you somewhere new, better, healthier idea. And that's where it was interesting. As you know, I've done many documentary series and revealed films, and one of them was Christ Revealed. And when we were in Israel doing that documentary, it was having profound, it was like bringing kind of biblical wisdom to life, was something that struck me in an unexpected way. And that's where it struck me, saying this ancient wisdom is exactly that, wisdom. And there's got to be a way to, from the context of health and well-being, to extract from that and put it on the ground in today's world. And I've always been a big proponent. When I used to train my doctors, I would train them on what I call general adaptive potential, which is, kind of what you're talking about, allostatic load, and how big is your bucket, how much stress can you manage. And the whole point is that, the wider your gap or general adaptive potential, the more stress you can adapt to, and the more that your body can flow through it, as compared to create, literally distortion energy in the body as a result of too much stress. And what so many people and patients that I'd worked with over years, they would come and they'd be like, oh boy, if I could only go back to the way I was, 5 years ago or 3 years ago, how can I restore, basically what we'd call restorative health? How can I restore myself back to there? And I would look at them and say, how you were 3 or 5 years ago brought you to this day. You don't want to try to restore health. And Donnie Epstein uses what I think is, Dr. Epstein, a great term. The difference between restorative health, bringing something kind of back to a moment in time, as compared to reorganizational health, saying maybe there's resources that you can bring into your experience, including supplementation, that can get your body to reorganize around them and express itself at a higher level of life and function. And so and that is kind of like my mind has been moving in that direction. You and I have had very deep and meaningful conversations, around more of the spiritual or energetic aspects of health expression, right? That form follows energy. So it's like, rather than trying to get somebody to a pre-existing condition where maybe the energetics weren't right, the form of today is just the energetic patterns of yesterday. How can we disrupt and reorganize at higher frequency as far as your energetics, so that you have better form and outcomes? And incidentally, let me just remind everybody, Celine was just sending me a note that if you'd like to submit a question, we are going to be taking questions shortly here at support@mywisdomnutrition.com. So just send an email there with your question, and we'll get to as many as we can. So anyway, I love when you're talking about youth span and understanding, and the first thing that you say is adaptogenics being a key to that. It resonates deeply with me. Are there any exciting adaptogenics you're working on right now?
Yes, there is.
Of course.
So Interestingly, what brought this out, and this is kind of the story for a lot of the things I've kind of stumbled into. It's like, it's necessity is the mother of invention, right? Like, so rhodiola is one of my all-time favorite adaptogens, and it was put on the CITES. Some people say CITES list. It's CITES. It has to do with endangered species.
Mm.
And whether it was rhodiola rosea or the other form of rhodiola, and I'm blanking at the moment to why I can't think of it. But they were both put on the endangered species list.
Mm.
And what's fascinating is the active wasn't the rosavins, it was the salidroside, if you look at all the data. And so I started looking at, can we make pure fermented salidroside? And sure enough, I worked with a partner and we could, and it is what we can deliver in a tiny amount, like in 50 milligrams, is highly experiential.
Mm.
It's amazing. And like, speaking of which, when I would travel to China and I was, upside down 13, 14 hours, amazing, like how great I felt cognitively in terms of my circadian rhythm, everything. So it's just one of those things that, and by the way, when I talk about stress on a physiologic level, there's a deep correlation to neurological stress or maybe even spiritual stress, if you want to
Right.
get really deep into your total capacity, right? So think of like stoicism as like this idea of like the obstacle is the way, right? It's a way of thinking that this is how I get stronger. This is how I become more resilient, more anti-fragile, harder to kill. And that type of thinking, the obstacle is the way, is going to make you more physiologically resilient. Likewise, if I do cold plunges, hot saunas, fasting, and I do those with diligency and purpose and intention, that's going to help me be more stoic mentally.
Hmm.
And so there is like a deep crossover, and I've noticed that when I use adaptogens that I can deal with mental, spiritual, physical, financial stress better.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned some of these things because there is this energetic, spiritual side of your experience, right? One of the things I'm thinking about right now, which is it's a chapter in a book, and it's that I'm working on, but it's dealing with this whole paradox of identity in general, right? It's a sense of I and having an identity, and when you really think deeply about it, it can be it can get very complicated and very paradoxical. So the why I say this is that a lot of times who you are, maybe in a soul level, if you will, but how you're expressed, um, it might be two different things. There's maybe there's a discord, and I think that creates an internal angst, a spiritual stress that can create adverse nervous system function because the body, when you have very challenged psychology, that's a load, and starts to deteriorate your resources, et cetera. And so, lack of expression, maybe, identity issues as far as, what you identify with and what your life is like, and them not being the same thing, as well as so many other aspects of this on the psychospiritual level, I guess I'd say, that those can be resource depleting. Now, if you get into physiology and biochemistry, you could actually start to assert what supplements might be depleted, or what nutrients in your body might be depleted to manage the stress, and supplementing them would at least help to support the strain, but it won't change the root cause. You're just helping to support the whatever you're burning too much of. What would you say, because you're so expert in this, but what would you say are some of the nutrients that people burn at a much higher pace when they're dealing with like a lot of psycho-emotional stress in their life?
First off, you're running through backing up like the brain and the heart. are deeply energy dependent cells. Your neurons, your brain cells, and your cardiomyocytes are going to use a lot of ATP. Therefore, these mitochondrial support supplements will have the biggest effect on your heart and your brain. So things like CoQ10, PQQ, these kinds of ingredients are going to be helpful for the heart and the brain. There's also a new trace amino acid that could be a new vitamin called ergothioneine that is really profound to protect the mitochondria. But the B vitamins are going to be huge when it comes to stress. We see consistently across the board, you're running through a lot of these B vitamins. In particular, the best form to get would be the methylated B vitamins in their active form. So for B12, that's methylcobalamin. For folate, that's going to be 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, also just called methylfolate. A lot of people have the MTHFR gene mutation where they don't convert folate well, and they can actually be anemic, even getting enough folate, but not getting the active form. So the B vitamins are going to be significant. There's also data, interestingly, on these like buffers, like things like, in particular, creatine. We're seeing creatine not be just for muscle, but it's really profound at the heart and at the brain level. It's actually really neuroprotective with like traumatic brain injuries and a lot of these scenarios. But those would be some of the biggest ones off the top of my head.
Well, I didn't hear that about creatine. That's a new one on me. Fascinating. That's why I love talking to you. I always find out and learn new things. So I'll remind people we're going to start getting to questions in just a moment. Also on your viewing page, we have an exciting announcement that our wisdom formula, which is our Bible-based herbal formula, is now available on Amazon, and it's not a fake one. It's not a fake offering that we were just talking about earlier, but something that you can get there. We currently, because we knew we were doing this, we have a discount on it now, so you can get it at a really good price. And we're excited to get our Amazon presence up and running and making it available that way. We have, and I know that some of you or many of you probably ordered last year. We ended up in a pretty big back order. We do very small batches because it's very high quality, very high frequency. So we had some delays in being able to get it to people, which was agonizing to me because I know you wanted it, but we can't break the process. You gotta make sure that we keep quality first. But there is inventory right now, so if you order, you will get it. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you'll get it right away. So I just want to make you aware of that and know that this is a real passion project of ours, and we're loving the experience that people are having with it. One of the things, Shawn, I was having lunch years ago with Deepak Chopra. We're doing a program together. And he said something to me that stuck after over 20 years. And he said to me, Patrick, equally as important as what you eat is the state of mind you're in while you're eating it, right? And this is,
Yep.
yeah, and this is important. And I'll tell you why, because this is, at least to me, and I'd love to get your comment on this, but you were talking about, nervous system modulation, the autonomic system, sympathetic and parasympathetic, and if you're eating the exact same food or taking the exact same supplements and you're in a sympathetic state versus a parasympathetic state, how your body uses it and how effectively is going to be completely different. One of the things, like, this is like when I take, this is what I tell people when they're taking this, is like there's a protocol, and this is why I'd love to see more manufacturers do this or supplements providers saying, hey, don't just take this and drop it in your mouth. What I tell people is close your eyes, hold a divine thought or a positive thought for a moment, then take it while you're having the thought, let it infuse, and then you're also, now you're becoming aware, right? You're placing awareness inside your body, not outside. And how my body and nervous system is receiving it completely changes. I haven't done any studies on this, to say, oh, here's the different outcomes. But I can tell you that no matter what your supplements are, when you are rushing in the morning and you got your handful of pills and you're shoving them down your throat and swallowing it with a cup of coffee and running to the next thing, not the best way to do it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
1000%. You probably heard me talk about this idea with psychedelics, but I talk about it a lot now related to supplements too. Uh, you're dead on, and I've I've definitely counseled supplement companies about this idea. I love the idea. Like, so the more in NLP, we talk about chaining psychosomatic anchors.
Mm,
So the more senses you can get involved, the better.
mm,
And you can anchor something that's positive or negative. And yes, your autonomic nervous system state's a part of this. So the thing is, it could be the healthiest thing in the world,
mm,
but if we're having if someone like hit us in the head every time we had a vitamin C, after a while, you would take that vitamin C and your body would, even without being hit in the head, would trigger inflammation and trauma.
mm. Yeah.
So now it's an anchor. So the more you can chain positive anchors to this experience, let's say like when you're trying to sell a home, you have like the fresh baked chocolate chip cookies and this whole like
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
People like imagine, oh, this is home. And so the more you can have a certain smell, a certain song, an affirmation, and you can get senses involved, get your spirit involved, and make it an intentional practice,
Mm,
more powerful it'll be. In bodybuilding, they've shown having the intention of doing a curl or envisioning yourself lifting that weight
yes.
has more profound impact than potentially even lifting the weight. So this is where absolutely, and on top of this, if your body is in sympathetic nervous system, it's in fight or flight. It does not want to, it's not rest and digest, break down, utilize, store, it's not in that mode. It's pretty much going to reject these things. It's like, we don't need this. On top of that, if you're doing hundreds of supplements, your liver may be rejecting a lot of supplements. I would say also be more intentional and cycle your supplements, like, or just don't use hundreds of things like I used to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
I believe that the bioavailability, like this cytochrome P450 pathway, like will drop dramatically because your liver's saying like, hey, we don't need all this stuff. It's like kind of worried about all these things coming in.
Yeah.
So absolutely do agree with you and getting into that like positive affirmation. This is why prayer is so powerful,
Mm,
like regardless of religion. Uh, when you're going to, have food. I mean, think about that process. Like, you're grateful, you're present, and then you're eating, and then you're even thinking about your food and how it tastes, and that's a wholly different experience than like shoving your face with something, riding down the highway, where even if that food is healthy, you may be triggering inflammation because it's not conducive to a healthy mind state.
yeah. I'm like this conversation excites me because there's this to me is sort of the X factor of it all. The science is great and it's important and valid, but there's these X factor aspects to you and the experience that when I say you, I'm talking about you in the audience right now watching this, that can be a massive difference just doing what you're already doing, and you talk about the power of prayer. I mean, one practice that I've had now for years is that finishing every day with a gratitude prayer, and it's life changing. It's such a simple thing. It doesn't cost anything, but just having gratitude for my life and the blessings in it, and acknowledging that on a daily basis through a prayer is changes you. It changes you and makes any other life enhancing activity you're going to do work better.
Mhm.
um, and for me it's a spiritual thing. I don't do it for a particular outcome. I do it because I just feel like spiritually it's the right thing to do, is to give thanks. So but there are benefits to it as a consequence. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
You up for a few questions?
Yeah, let's go.
All right. Oh, this is interesting. So Rosemary asks, does the frequency get protected when shipping across the border to Canada? I imagine you're talking about wisdom, and the answer is yes, in the sense that what's there, the frequency starts with how the source materials are received, and they are prayed over, incidentally. And sophagiotones are played in the room where the glass vats are extracting, the nutrients, et cetera. And so all of the intention and manufacturing practice and purity, once it's in the bottle and sealed, it doesn't matter where it's being shipped. The frequency is going to be there, and I would say you're going to feel it as soon as you hold the divine thought and put this in your mouth. You're going to feel it as soon as you do it. It's a pretty rad thing. And Amazon can get it there, so I think you'll have an easy time getting it. But thank you for that question. Here's one from Marcella. This a little sad, but let's get into it. She said, "I lost my most beloved and amazing husband to 4 intense months of turbo cancer, and we're hearing a little too much of that nowadays. Unfortunately, Marcella, you're not the only one. And I'm having a hard time with the level of grief at the loss, on top of which I am a highly sensitive person already, and as well as financial and other challenges that keep emerging. Is there any protocol or recommendations that you can make that would assist and, if possible, speed up the healing? I know this is not a usual question for you, but you both know the effects of such grief and stress on health. And boy, yes, I do understand that. But I'd love, Shawn, for you maybe to speak to that. Somebody who's had, a severe loss, and then in the aftermath or the wake of it, all the other stresses. What might help facilitate her healing? And incidentally, I think the first step I'll just say is the fact that you have an intention to want to heal, because a lot of people get depressed and they don't care. So the fact that you want to heal, I think, is important. But what else might you say about that, Shawn?
To sit with your grief,
Mm.
to actually like sit with it. For me, right after I got divorced, I went down to Costa Rica, and I thought I was going to meet the girl of my dreams and party it up, and I was going to be in paradise and all the things. And I ended up having months of just being alone, sitting in the jungle, being by the beach, completely uh, away from electronics, no friends down there. And I had to like sit with my grief, and it helped me probably avoid years and years of having that be a part of my physiology. If you watch, they're brilliant. The Pixar movies, Inside Out 1 and 2, like they really go into the idea of like having your emotion, and it's not something to discard. Like emotions that come up are signals; they're telling you something. And so when anger, sadness, grief, these things come up, you need to recognize them, sit with them, and say, what is it you're trying to tell me? And then learn that lesson and then release it.
Mm.
And until you like allow it and sit with it and learn the lessons, you will not get past it. It'll actually work its way into your physiology and become disease. I mean, this is the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton or Dr. Joe Dispenza. So I think just the most important thing is allowing it. And grief is a love coming to an end.
Mm.
And so just recognize that you had that love and that you loved that person, that dog, that job, whatever it was. And there was real love there and loss.
Mm.
And appreciate that you did have the love. And now recognize that it's time to move into the next chapter.
Really wise words. You and I both, Shawn, have a mutual friend that lost his wife, the love of his life, not long ago. And
Mhm.
one of the most remarkable things, I'm talking about Jeff, but one of the most remarkable things was how courageous he was in wanting to sit with his grief and actually do that process. Because we live in a world of distraction, and man, can't Netflix and a bunch of other things just distract you from the pain, the grief, and the guilt that might be accompanying all the things, all the emotions like you just spoke about. And he went through a good year or more of really grieving. But he decided to face it head on, to not hide from any of it, to just experience it because it's a part of the human experience. Fortunately, unfortunately, just is.
Yeah.
And if you can have self love and self care in the process, whatever that might be, that's a really good thing. But I think that's really, like, rather than say you take these take these particular supplements to help you with that, I think it's more about your own process and being with it, sitting with it. I mean, Shawn just said it beautifully, so I'm not going to try to repeat any of it. But and I feel you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that that happened in your life. But thanks for showing up here and asking that question.
Mhm.
How can you tell? We talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but how can you tell if a supplement is high quality or not, or if it's a knockoff? So you want to do like a 30-second recap?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, again, like buying from a trusted company, but then a trusted seller of that trusted company, because it could be counterfeited. But they're definitely like top tier brands to buy from. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, that's important. And then, and if you're not sure, ask for their lab reports and so on. They should have that stuff readily available. If they don't, then I'd be suspect. That was from Jane. So Lily asks, have been follow. Oh, it's just a comment. Have been following your work since Christ revealed. Well, you've been following me for some years then, Lily. Thank you very much, and glad you're still here with me now. What are the ingredients of wisdom? So, you can go to the wisdom page and click on it, but it's basically a Bible-based formula. There's 8 herbs in it that include frankincense and myrrh and anise and milk thistle, hyssop, cinnamon, turmeric, and tulsi. I think those are the 8. And I'm not going to get into a full recap of what every one of them does, but you can go to the page and take a look if that's interesting to you. But the whole idea is for this to be a high frequency adaptogenic wisdom formula that is, that comes from ancient wisdom, but we really honor the way this stuff is grown, harvested, processed, and brought to you. In like, we go to extremes on it. So you can read more about it, but those are the 8 herbs. I eat a large variety of wholesome foods and take basic vitamins to fill the gaps. Would supplements still be needed? Shawn?
Yes.
I figured that was the answer. Go ahead.
Here's the thing. One, our soil is greatly depleted versus where it was thousands of years ago, even 100 years ago. We don't have the trace minerals. We don't have the nutrients that we once had. Everything is over farmed, over tilled. The soil is leached. There is just not the same quality of soil.
Yeah.
2, the things that we are exposed to, the stresses that we are exposed to are unparalleled in human history. The amount of EMF, all the frequencies of all the things of radio and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and electricity, on and on and on. And then there is thousands and thousands of chemicals that are put into our ecosphere every single year that we have no idea what these are, what they're doing, and what the long-term impact of these. They're going into our foods, they're going into sprays and detergents and things that we're putting on and around our body, and we have no idea. And just think of I'm traveling and I wanted water, but this is micro and nanoplastics.
Right.
I have 2.5 teaspoons of plastic in my brain right now.
Wow.
That's what they say. And
Wow.
there is a lot of this. The amount of stuff that I could tell you, we could go down with xenoestrogens, phytoestrogens, metalloestrogens that are in the environment that we're consuming, that are endocrine disruptors. There is so much. that's happening all around us, that our body is literally under attack.
Wow.
And so I absolutely believe that supplementation now more than ever is critical.
Yeah. Um, I think Neff said it is, and it's something that it's. I think if you have an objective to really be healthy and thrive, you got to supplement. It can't there's just because of what's going on in the environment. You just have to get that extra help. Um, Carol had a couple of questions, but they're sort of condition based, and not really for this this conversation. So, Carol, I'm just going to recommend. I mean, listen, ChatGPT or Google, and you're going to get some answers to some of those questions. But I just don't think that this is the forum here for those specific conditions. So, I apologize, and but also I think you can find those pretty readily online. Those answers. Uh, Question, don't see who it's from, but it says, can supplements help relieve nerve pain? If so, which ingredient should I be looking at to target this? So somebody's got nerve pain and
Yeah.
neuralgia. I don't know what they might mean exactly by that, but what sort of things help that?
With neuralgia, some of the best supplements that we've seen. I mean, first off, you want to make sure that you are getting these methylated B vitamins. It could be like a neuronal sheath kind of issue. You want to make sure you're getting essential fatty acids that are involved in that too, in particular like phospholipids, uh, things like phosphatidylserine and phosphatidylcholine. But probably the most important ones I've seen directly addressing the pain would be PEA, which is a really profound ingredient, similar to anandamide and some of these kind of cannabinoids in that pathway, which bringing up that different cannabinoids might be helpful, like CBD, CBG in particular. And then the last one is something called agmatine sulfate, has been studied with neuralgia. So those would be the ones I would look at.
Agmatine sulfate. That's a new one on me. So thank you for sharing it. All right. We'll do a final question here. I know we're right at the end. How do I know if my body is actually absorbing nutrients to know whether to increase my dosage? Additionally, could too much be harmful? How do I know how much?
Hmm. That's really tough to answer. I mean, one, you want to look at you want to do really advanced testing, as much testing as possible. The problem is some of the testing for some of these nutrients is going to be at the plasma level, meaning at blood level, and it's not necessarily tissue level unless you're doing like biopsies or, literally taking like aspiration with, a needle and then studying that to see what's happening at the tissue level or at the cellular level. So we're looking at the plasma level, and that can be helpful.
Mm,
But what you also want to look at is the blood work that could be like the outcomes.
mm,
So this might mean your inflammation systemically, your glycation, which is blood sugar damage, your oxidation. These are going to be some of the most important factors. So for oxidation, I might look at like oxidized LDL. For glycation, I would look at hemoglobin A1C. Inflammation, I would look at CRP. Like these are going to be really important at kind of understanding the disease process and biological aging versus chronological aging.
mm. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so it's to your point, tough question, but I think those are some ways that you can really consider. And to your point, like what I do, I get my blood work done at least a couple times a year, maybe every quarter. And you're on a certain supplements, you should see changes in the areas that you'd expect based on the supplements you're taking. Otherwise, they're either not getting absorbed, or you're not taking enough, or you don't have the right quality supplement. Any number of variables.
Yep.
So Shawn, man, on very, very, very little notice, thank you for not only you jump in, but look how brilliant you are. Thank you just so much for sharing.
Oh, thank you. You bring out the best of me. I always love doing work with you and being interviewed by you. It's a beautiful thing. We have a great chemistry.
We really do, and I could talk to you all day. Like I said, I always learn from you, and you're not just brilliant in your understanding, but you just have you're such a great communicator. So thank you for taking the time and sharing all this. And then for all of you, thank you so very much for taking your time tonight. As I said in the beginning, we just really want to deliver value and see if we could have a positive impact on your life. I hope that you got something or some things, maybe a few things that you could take away from tonight that you found valuable. I appreciate you for the wisdom people here. I very much appreciate your trust in us with that product. And just in general for the entire Gentempo.com community, just thanks for always being a part of this. And it's always great to connect with you here. So that will end the broadcast now. And
can I say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Go ahead,
Sorry.
Shawn.
If anyone has any further questions, you can ask me them at Shawn Wells, ShawnWells, on Instagram, or go to ShawnWells.com. I have tons of free information and newsletters and all that good stuff.
Well, thank you for doing that. So we'll find a way to get that to you. Actually, everybody's going to get a replay, and I'll make sure that those links are in there for Shawn. I didn't want to offer that, Shawn, because you might get inundated. But,
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, Shawn is very service minded. So hey, you had some questions, take him up on it, and go ahead and reach out for him. And follow him. I mean, he's a genius, and he's constantly got new and great information coming out that can be very impactful for your life. So thank you again, Shawn, for that. Thank you all for being here, and that will end our broadcast tonight.